Hello, everyone. Welcome to Here on Earth. My name is Marley Daintree. I am your host. I am here today with Anna Dillinger. Anna is a holistic practitioner specialized in German new medicine, minerals, hair tissue mineral analysis, intuitive nutrition, and somatic coaching. She helps clients decode symptoms biologically, downgrade conflicts somatically, and replenish vital minerals stores to thrive. Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So we connected after I interviewed Maria. I know that you guys have done work together.
Yes.
I'd love you to tell me more about your own journey and how you got into the work that you do, how you found G&M, and sort of some of the turning points on your own health life journey that led you here.
Absolutely. So I feel like I had two separate lives because I had a 20-year corporate career before this. So I did what a lot of women do in modern day Western society. I was laser focused on taking care of myself and having this, wonderfully rich, successful career and climbing the ladder. I worked for um, a lot of very large organizations working in human resources. And I knew from the very beginning that it wasn't really aligned with what I wanted to do. But yet, I was driven by certain markers with which I deemed to be important for success. And so I was able to muddle through it until 2017 when we had our first baby. And that is when my whole world turned upside down in the best possible way. I think that, finding my husband, getting married, certainly I had connected with some aspects of my femininity, but it wasn't until becoming a first time mom that my priorities just really shifted. And specifically, I was always interested in health, being healthy, but um, not really by trade, not something that I particularly studied. It was just something, I wanted to look good and feel healthy. But as soon as I became a mom, and I remember that first wellness checkup at the pediatrician, and I remember thinking, oh no, this cannot be the best that there is to offer my child. This is not going to do. It felt really scary. I went into this immediate mama bear mode, like absolutely terrified about how I was going to take care of this child and not feeling like the care that I had access to was going to be aligned. Um, and so that's what started my journey into studying holistic health. So I spent 8 years doing a whole lot of different programs and certifications and sort of meandering my way through different philosophies. Um, but always with the intention of I wanted to take care of my family. I really felt like that was critical. And then ultimately, the pandemic was another huge turning point for me. I can't do this anymore. This career is like really draining me. And, we all had to think about what was important in life. And I knew that I couldn't spend much more time doing that. And so that's when I officially launched my business in 2021. And I did both for a really long time. So I did the HR career by day and then every off hour, very secretly, not certainly not talking about it in my corporate job. I was also helping clients and learning, all the things that go into running a business. And then German New Medicine, I stumbled upon during that time, but like so many of us, um, maybe it scared me. There was something innately that I wasn't ready for. I was just too out there in some way for me. And so I've dabbled in it, but I didn't really commit to it until about a year ago is when I really said, okay, I got to get serious about learning this and implementing this and making it part of my business. Yeah.
So with your first child, did you during that time in 2017, was there anything particular that worried you, or it was just like a mismatch of seeing like the system, what the system had to offer for health, and being like, oh, this doesn't really support thriving life. Like,
I mean, it was mostly medical freedom stuff. I
yeah.
just felt very coerced. I felt
Mm,
bullied. I
mm,
didn't have enough information to be able to um, defend us, to really be able to debate with the doctor. And that rattled me. So that's really what set me forward was let me understand why we need to take this beautiful, perfect baby and presume that there is something defective with the immune system. It just never made any sense. And it was interesting because, I was raised, somewhat conventionally. I never questioned the system, but seeing this beautiful baby, and obviously everything that goes into carrying life and birthing life and then being told no, 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 you need to do this thing that feels there were many, many things that felt very aggressive. Um, so that was the big thing was just, I don't even want to participate in the medical system was a very clear message for me early on.
yeah. Yeah. I remember for myself that when my son was born in 2019, and the whole first year of his life was this huge question about vaccines. Because
Yeah.
I'd I don't know, I'd had a bit of a hippie upbringing, and I knew lots of people that were anti-vaccine, and so I had this idea that vaccines are dangerous and wrong, but I still believed in viruses, so I was like, "Oh, it's so scary to, like, make this decision," and I remember when I finally found German New Medicine, I was like, "Oh, thank God." Like, there's a way that this makes sense that, like, and I think another thing for me was I'd always wondered, like, why do people get cancer? Like, it seems like everything in the world has there's a reason for it, but then there's these healthy people that just get cancer one day. And that was one piece that never really fit for me. And I was like, oh, this doesn't make sense. So that was another thing when I found Germany medicine. I was like, oh, there is an explanation. Like, there is reason in this world.
I grew up kind of similarly. So I was really fortunate to be raised by a mom that was much more alternative. And so we really were not raised on, I mean, yes, we had some vaccines, but we were not predominantly raised on antibiotics, and there was homeopathy, and there was very much a connection to how we felt emotionally too. It wasn't just like how we felt physically. So I remember from very, very early on probably attempting to live more biologically. I didn't know that I was doing that, but I remember very, very young, probably 4 or 5 years old, having an awareness of, oh, I'm having stomach aches, because I'm at my grandma's house and I don't like this food. And, very, I guess what people would call like self actualized. So I think that that helped me. And then, I went off to college and they do what you do in college, like I had to get a bunch of vaccines for college and I ended up in this phase of life where I was sick all the time. And I was like, what is this? And I remember the more I would go to the doctor, the more symptoms I would have. And so I did have that context, right? I mean, it wasn't like I had never questioned the system before, but like you, none of it ever made sense to me that,
Mm.
we have all of this money in the medical system at our disposal, and yet all of these so-called chronic diseases continue, all of these, cancers and whatnot. So finding German new medicine was absolutely life-changing, and I wish that I had always known it.
And it's funny as well how you hear people say, like, I wish I knew this earlier. Because I had a similar sort of thing where, like, I found Dr. Melissa Sell's Instagram page, I think in 2021. So I was pregnant with my daughter, and that was when it all, like, but I remembered, like, I'd sort of blocked it out. And then recently I remembered that in like 2017 or something, I'd met a man who had told me about German new medicine. And I'd been like, wow, that's fascinating. That's so interesting. Never looked into it again. Like, it was like there was some part of me that wasn't quite like, I don't know. Like, I was like, yeah, it sounds right, but it's a bit too far for me right now, or something like that. Like,
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, How else did you how else did you feel that German new medicine, like from other holistic health that you'd been interested in and looking into, what was like different with German new medicine?
So when I first started studying holistic health, my entry point was through nutrition. That felt like the safest place to start because I had already been very aware of how I ate. I was like the typical person that did all the omission diets. Like if I'm just gluten free and dairy free, corn and soy and everything free, then I'm going to be good and I'm not going to have any stomach aches. So that was really resonant. And I always saw the value in, obviously what we eat, how we nourish ourselves is going to have an effect on how we feel on some level. And then I felt like I needed more of the clinical background. So I did a program that was very much oriented around functional testing, which from an educational perspective was fascinating and really valuable. But if I'm being honest, it quite turned me off to the whole idea of ever practicing in this space because I couldn't wrap my brain around asking somebody to spend thousands of dollars to chase their tail, and I knew right away just hearing about this, there is no way that this can be the answer, that this is too much. It's overkill. What are we even looking for? We don't even know what we're looking for. Because in that world, we're sort of bifurcating the body into different parts, into different systems. And it's like, hello, we're one system. We talk. So after that, I found minerals, and minerals was the answer to all of my prayers because it finally was a modality, if you will, or a way of looking at the body that was much more truly holistic, like looking at it from, the perspective of being one whole body, one whole mind and body. Um, but even with that, I knew that there was more to the story because I spent a number of years trying to help people so-called balance their minerals. And I knew that it felt like playing God. It didn't feel like it was feasible. It didn't make sense to me. I was like, we don't have more intelligence than the innate intelligence of the body. If the body is moving minerals around, if it's adapting, it probably has a very good reason. And so with entering with being able to bring German new medicine into the picture, it was the framework I was missing to understand, um, not that we want to look at the minerals and change the minerals. We want to see what is our physiology expressing that the psyche can't. What is it that the psyche is trying desperately to get through? What are these adaptive patterns that are the cumulative effect of our life, of our, the way we've been living and the conflicts that we find ourselves in. So it was the perfect language to decipher how are the mind and body connected. I knew that they were, but I couldn't make sense of it until I could see Dr. Hammer's beautiful work, and then it all clicked for me.
Mm, and so specific. I think that was the thing that was different for about German new medicine than everything else that I'd sort of like, like Louise Hay or all these other things where it's like, oh, this happens, but not every time. And yeah, for me, I was not like super health conscious. I feel like I was like luckily healthy because I had like a reasonably, I don't know, active, happy life or whatever. But um, like I ate heaps of junk food. I was never very disciplined. I didn't know how to be. I would try, but it wouldn't last long. And I always just felt like, I don't know, like I know people that make like really unhealthy choices who are really healthy. And I know people that do everything perfectly and end up really sick. So I always had this like, oh, it must be a little bit more complicated than that. And and then when I did find German new medicine, so like one of the exceptions to I don't know, is about nutrition and if you're malnourished. So that's something I always wondered about. Like, so how malnourished, how mineral deficient, like when do the minerals start to play a part in our conflicts? And how do deficiencies or overloads that we have affect the way that we might interpret a conflict?
Yeah. I mean, there's a
It's a
lot
big
there.
question.
And I think I'm just scratching the surface. Um, I have a colleague who does the same work that I do, and as far as we know, we're the only two that are doing this, trying to sort of blend the two worlds of minerals and German new medicine and look at the hair tissue mineral analysis as a tool to peek into the biological conflicts and adaptations that people are experiencing. And it's not straightforward because when you're talking about the hair, this is a detox pathway, right? So this is where um, we're seeing the body change over time, but it's not quick. It's not like blood where we could go and take the test today and then take the test in 2 weeks and it's quite different. When we're looking at the hair, we're looking at, depending on how long the hair is, it could be a 2 or 3 month average. And, we can have two people that are running the exact same conflicts, but there's nuances because I like to think about the hair tissue mineral analysis almost like a fingerprint. It's so unique to each person. And you could be running a number of conflicts that are, for example, draining your potassium stores or causing your calcium to be quite displaced. So, having that awareness of not that we have to fix something based on a diagnostic test, but what opportunities do we have to support the body so that it can function that much more optimally? So I
Mm,
just was talking to a client about this today. Regardless of what you do with any of this, let's say you never replenish any minerals ever in your life, you're still going to experience conflict resolution, healing. I mean, all of it's going to happen. But I also think that just like we can all agree that if we're eating in a way that's the closest to nature and how nature intended, we're going to optimize the amount of nutrients and those nutrients are going to be helpful to the body in some way. That is the same as the concept of minerals. We're getting minerals from the water that we drink, the food that we eat. Um, whether we're able to be in nature, such as swim in the ocean. I mean, it's basically a beautiful mineral bath, or maybe we have the opportunity to walk through a stream each day. These are all opportunities for the body to take in nutrients. So, I guess to answer your question, if you are living in a way where you're in a lot of conflict, even a lot of generalized stress that wouldn't necessarily, be categorized as a biological conflict, shock, or adaptation, um, you might find yourself in a situation where there just isn't as much gas in your tank, so to speak. And so, could you potentially stay in conflict longer? Maybe if you don't have the resources to really think clearly, you're experiencing more brain fog. We can see through mineral patterns if you're maybe experiencing more irritability or anger or even rage. Um, there are particular minerals that are critical to emotional regulation. So again, you will still heal biologically no matter what. But if you know about this and you know that, hey, there's this particular mineral that's really taking the hit right now, and can I eat more foods that are rich in that food, or can I do something very natural, like an herbal tea infusion that's going to have particular nutrients that are going to be supportive? I think it just makes the process that much easier.
mm. So what are some minerals for irritability and rage?
Yeah,
I
that's
feel
a
like
good question.
I feel like that's come up for me in pregnancy.
Yes. Well, let me make a little plug about pregnancy first.
Mhm.
So, how do we get minerals in the first place? Well, we essentially get a mineral blueprint from our moms in utero. So, whatever mom has to offer is what the baby receives. Of course, the baby's going to take precedence. So, we know that in pregnancy, it's a very depleting state for the mom because she's just, giving and giving of herself in so many ways. I've heard it say that, you might be donating upwards of 10% of your mineral stores. And, if you're having babies in quick succession, that's obviously going to be more what I would call mineral trauma. Um, and so, if you've experienced certain conflicts as the mom, you know that there can be an effect to the baby. The baby can also in utero, have conflicts. So depending on, again, what your story is like and what conflicts you tend to run. And I really do believe that we tend to run certain types of conflicts. We do have predispositions because of core beliefs that we hold about ourselves, past trauma, different things that shape our experience of life. There can be, for example, with the kidney collecting tubule program, that has a very large involvement of sodium and potassium. So, what is the body doing? It's saying, okay, we're a fish out of water. There's some threat that we will be thrust onto the proverbial land and unable to survive. So the filtration gates of the kidneys are closing, or to some extent shutting, to preserve life. And so we're retaining water, we're retaining sodium. There are variations, of course, with KCT where there might be little nuances, but we're holding on, right? We're holding on to minerals. Um, and with this process, what can happen over time if we're running the kidney collecting tubule program for a long time is we can be excreting potassium through the urine. So we're holding on to sodium, and potassium is waning. And what the body does is it likes to maintain a certain amount of potassium. It's an intracellular mineral, so it should be inside the cells, but there's also a little bit of it that likes to be in the blood. So the body will, like a bank account, it will borrow from the tissue stores if the blood starts to wane, and then eventually, the tissue stores of potassium also start to wane. And that is where I see people going into a state where that emotional regulation is really hard. um,
Mm.
See it. There's a particular pattern on the HTMA, which is the ratio of sodium to potassium. If that ratio starts to go up, it starts to go high. The higher it goes, the more associated it is with that irritability, that anger, that rage. So I'll see this with people. I'll look at their HTMA and I say, "Are you feeling a lot of anger right now?" And most people feel shame. They don't want to admit it. Especially us moms, we don't ever want to be associated with anger and rage. No, no, no. I'm Mother Teresa all the time. But we feel it. We don't understand, why do I just like hate everything right now? And I will tell people, look, you have to consider, in this particular case, potassium is medicine for you. So if you are feeling irritable, put a little bit of cream of tartar under the tongue, go have some coconut water. Um, everybody says banana, but there are lots of other foods that have potassium in them. Even having an orange is a great option.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I noticed, like, I've noticed in all my pregnancies, but this one more so because I'm more aware of Germany medicine and everything, but that I feel irritable about my territory. So I was thinking, like, I have some kind of territorial track around pregnancy that, like, if my son throws a ball at my head, I'm more reactive than I would be not pregnant. And a part of me thought, like, oh, it's because I've got this unborn child inside of me. So it's like I'm protective of that baby. And I think that that's true, but also hearing you speak, I'm like, oh, I wonder if it's also that this baby is taking so many of my minerals. So it's like my minerals are not the same that they were. So it's easier to activate. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's super
One of
interesting.
the one of the minerals that is the most affected by conflict, stress, pregnancy is magnesium. And I think
Hmm.
it's not a coincidence that quickly into becoming pregnant, we can also experience a slowdown of the digestive tract. And yes, a lot of that has to do with the hormones and everything that's shifting, but there also is a big change in magnesium, and we're just churning and burning through it. And most women are not told to replenish it. It's not a common practice to say, take a magnesium chloride bath. But something like that can be so life changing in pregnancy, is just, to the extent that you're comfortable bathing, getting in that magnesium chloride through the skin, through, the transdermal way is so healing and has the ability to really not only calm the system, but I think absolutely there's an emotional component of that too.
Mm. Um, this is a question that I have magnesium spray, and when you spray it on, like if you get itchy, does the itchiness signal that you're more deficient? Like the more itchy? No, okay. I read that somewhere and I was like, oh wow, I'm so deficient. I'm so
I,
itchy.
I don't know if I would say no, I wouldn't go that far. I think when most of us that work in this space, when we suggest uh, sprays, we say the soles of the feet because on the
Hmm.
bottom of the feet there is not that sensation. So I mean, we recommend that the groups that I hang out in, we recommend that across the board, especially if we're giving it to kids, like let's put it on the soles of the feet so that there isn't
Hmm.
that sensation. And I love topical magnesium in that way, but you're gonna get the most bang for your buck if you're doing a full body bath. So, I would say that for those that have been taking the oral magnesium pills, it can take a long, 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 long time to see a change with that versus you can see a shift in a matter of weeks with magnesium chloride baths. That's how well absorbed it is. So I think that if you're going to invest in something that's going to feel good, it's going to be relaxing, and it's actually going to be able to convert to your stores.
Yeah. I heard this guy on a podcast and I can't even remember his name and he didn't know German medicine and I looked up the stuff afterwards, so I don't know whether any of this is right. But I heard him speaking about the frequency of minerals. And I think that for magnesium, like that magnesium was like love and acceptance. And I think that like copper he had as acceptance. And then like iron was like fear. And then phosphorus I think was like self-acceptance. So like they were saying that you might have like low self-esteem if you've got low phosphorus. And then I was thinking like with muscle aches and things that also come up, like is that a self-devaluation caused by the mineral? And do you have you seen that about like the frequency of um minerals?
I wonder if that's more like the miasmatic homeopathy definition. I
Oh,
know
okay. Yeah.
Maria Maria is the best to ask these questions to because she knows all the inner workings of the meanings of these elements. But
Hmm.
what I can say is um if we're looking at an HTMA, there are certain minerals that to the best of my current knowledge, I associate with certain types of conflicts. So I will associate calcium and magnesium are structural and they're very
Hmm.
protective and they're very calming. They are associated most often for me with self devaluation. So we will see certain relational patterns. So you might see calcium and magnesium at one height if we're active in self evaluation, or something that's called a calcium shell, where calcium just kind of rises and rises and rises on the HTMA to a point where it's um, four times what it should be. And so in that particular case, a calcium shell, it's not that the body has too much calcium. It's not that somebody's been taking or eating too much calcium. It's that the body has shuttled the calcium into the soft tissue. Why would the body do that? Well, the body feels the need to protect itself. So that could
Mm.
be a situation where a very long self devaluation, hanging healing, or maybe even lots and lots of relapses. But there is a protective quality there. And I also could see that with um, some of the yellow group. So we know that if we have a mass that, for example, cannot be broken down, that the cell growth cannot be broken down adequately by the microbes. And then maybe we enlist a parasite, to break down the remainder of it, and it still remains there. What would the body do? The body would send in calcium. It would calcify
Mm.
the area. So we have calcium deposits all through the body. Why would the body do that? Well, it's protective. It's this, I don't know, maybe a paternalistic energy of like, I'm going to slow this down. Okay. I'm going to calm this area down. Um, and I would associate sodium and potassium they're the accelerants of the body. So they're more associated with the stress response. So I like this car analogy of calcium and magnesium are like the brakes, and sodium and potassium are like the accelerator. Like, let's get things
Mhm.
going. And so you can see a lot of movement with sodium when we're going into conflict activity, when we need to um, have an autonomic nervous system response. We need to have our stress hormones rise, aldosterone, cortisol, etc. And then we've got potassium coming in to calm down the stress response. So sodium comes in to elevate the heart rate, increase the blood pressure, all hands on deck with whatever the threat is. We're not worried about digesting, we're not worried about resting. And then it's buddy potassium that comes in to lower the heart rate, lower the blood pressure, get us thinking more clearly, get us back into where we need to be. So for me, those two minerals are very, very associated with the kidney collecting tubule program. So very, very much connected to survival. Okay, those are like critical. And then there's a very interesting connection between copper and zinc and territory. So copper being the
Mm,
feminine mineral, it's associated with estrogen, and zinc is the more reproductive mineral, or maybe you call it a masculine mineral because it is testosterone as well as progesterone. So we can see what's going on with maybe somebody's active in a sexual frustration conflict, and we see copper is down and zinc is up. They're more in their masculine. And then we may see,
mm,
I've seen it very few times, but you may catch the resolution of a territorial conflict and you see copper is up and zinc is down.
mm, that's so interesting. So what about iron deficiencies? I know that lots of people think that they're iron deficient and go and take like iron supplements, and then I've seen stuff saying that it's not that simple, that you might actually be iron overloaded. Can
Yeah,
you
that's a
explain
really,
that?
really, really good question. So I feel very fortunate that my education with minerals was from a gentleman named Morley Robbins, who's done incredible work to understand iron metabolism and the reticuloendothelial system, which is a fancy way of saying the internal iron recycling system. And he is so uncanny spot on with describing what is actually happening biologically. So, what he
Mhm,
says is completely aligned with what happens in self devaluation, what happens when iron is moving, and why would iron be moving. The only thing that he doesn't quite understand is the microbial aspect, because in his world, microbes are bad, parasites are bad. In our world, everything is quintessence, right? But long story short, all of us mammals are the same. We have no excretory pathways for iron. Okay. So if we have a lot of unbound iron, there's nowhere for it to go. Okay. We do have a couple of mechanisms. Women are very lucky that we have a monthly blood flow. That is the foremost way that we can dump or get rid of excess unbound iron. For men, it's a little bit different. They have different absorption rates because they don't have the monthly flow. But basically, iron is being shuttled back and forth, okay, by this recycling system. So we only in the conventional world, we only associate iron with the blood. Okay, we talk about iron being in the blood. Well, iron can also be in the tissue. And why would iron go into the tissue? Well, from what we see with Hammer's work, especially when we're talking about the mesoderm, I can say this for sure, but I really think it's happening in all adaptations, that the body is moving iron from the bloodstream into the tissue during the conflict active phase. It's saying, okay, we're going to, specifically with self devaluation, I'll relate this to. We are questioning ourselves if this is a bone deep self devaluation. This is particularly true that we're not feeling strong. Okay. We don't have a backbone. We don't feel strong enough. So the body says, let's take this strong element of iron, let's move it into the tissue by lowering iron absorption, reducing blood cell count. And the byproduct of this, and nobody really talks about this, but to me, I put two and two together. What do microbes love? Microbes love iron. they feed off of iron. Okay. So Morley's beautiful work says, where there is iron, you will find microbes, or where there are microbes, you will find iron. So what does the body do? Well, when we're in a conflict active stage, we have dormant microbes. Okay. And we know that self evaluation can go on for a long, long time. Okay. So we've got to keep these microbes fat and happy. I don't think it's a coincidence that iron, the foremost element to nourish them, happens to be there. Okay, so we may get diagnosed with anemia, low blood iron levels, and there's an assumption that there's just, oh my goodness, there's not enough iron in your body, especially with pregnancy. When we go into hemodilution the last trimester, oh no, what happens if you hemorrhage? You have to have iron. But what's missing from the discussion is there isn't an issue with body wide iron. There is an issue with where is the iron? Why would the body be moving it? So, in the particular case of a bone deep self evaluation, that is where the body is saying the iron needs to be. And no matter how many iron supplements, I work with loads of people on iron infusions, iron supplements, and I've had clients that are on infusions every couple of months and their markers do not move. They will not
Mhm.
move because the body is smarter than we could ever be. So it's not about, getting the iron up and doing that in a vacuum as if it's only an issue of iron depletion. It's a much bigger story of iron is going where it needs to be because we're in the conflict active phase. Once we resolve it, and we know that bone deep self evaluation is very hard to resolve, especially if it's been going on a long, 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 long time. In theory, when we resolve it, not immediately, but in the process of the healing phase, that iron, a lot of it, some of it, depending on the person, is going to be pushed back into the bloodstream. Okay, so when we think about the opposite of anemia, uh, hemochromatosis, where the iron levels are really high, that would be more of a relapse scenario, like a hanging healing. We keep going into it and we don't fully resolve the healing. Um, so the question then becomes, okay, great. So you're in this situation. You're one of those people that is in this bone deep self evaluation. How do you help yourself feel better? Well, that's a valid point. That's a valid need that has to be addressed because the reality of it is somebody in that situation is going to feel tired. They're going to feel kind of crummy. They're going to want to feel supported. That's where we have to remember nature in its innate intelligence creates food with all the cofactors. So instead of synthetic options, there are lots of food based options that we have at our disposal. Not everybody is comfortable with this, but glandulars, the organs from like beef organs, beef liver, beef spleen is incredibly high in iron. So that's typically one that I will go to if somebody's in a really advanced stage of anemia. But when we're offering the person iron in food form, it's going to have the cofactors that are needed to move iron, like copper, vitamin A, zinc, magnesium, B vitamins. So those foods that are really, really rich in natural iron, like meat, animal meat, are going to have the cofactors to actually support.
Mm. So Morley Robbins, is he's the root cause protocol guy, right? So I have read stuff on that. And I remember in my first pregnancy, I was told I was iron deficient and I was told to drink that iron stuff and I just couldn't stomach it. Like I just couldn't do it and I just couldn't do it. And then when I found the RCP stuff, I was like, "Oh, thank goodness I didn't drink that. Like it might have made it worse," sort of thing. And then I remember, like, I think someone said, like, yeah, beef liver and oysters. And in all of my pregnancies, I just want to eat oysters. And I think it's so like frustrating that people have all these ideas about what you can't eat in case you get some kind of bacteria. And and yeah, and I was really sick in my first pregnancy, and I was sick in my second one, and not so much this one. But my second pregnancy was so much easier because even though I was sick, I would just allow myself to eat what I wanted to eat. So like it wasn't like this extra layer of like, oh, I'm so sick and all I want to eat is salty steak, but I have to eat this vegetable because someone told me it's good for me or something. And yeah, it made such a difference. Even if I still felt nauseous, but to not have the like fear around what I wanted. Like,
Well, and that's one of the best things about German new medicine is that if we trust that our body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, and we let go of all the food fears and we let go of the need to source externally, and we know that there's really nothing that we need, then we will naturally crave the foods that we need. So you will find yourself, we see we see this often with people who have been on a long-term vegetarian diet or vegan diet at a certain point, they just know, okay, I've got to have some fish. I need to have something. My body is telling me. I've heard that so many times before. And even with kids, like I think it's easy to get into this cycle of this pressure of oh my gosh, I need to make sure that my child eats well and that they're healthy and that they get all the things that they need. And so we micromanage the heck out of them and what they eat. And you must eat that. But they know what they need. Even if they want to snack on more processed foods, they are still getting something from them that they need. I mean,
mm,
I'm not a fan of uh eating a lot of processed foods. I think that's where you have the opportunity as a parent to choose what's in the house. But
mhm.
whatever is in the house, I think that there should be latitude to say, what do you feel like having? Of course, we're going to have a family meal, but like around that, what is it that you want? What is it that your tummy, your system is telling you that you need?
Mm. And I think it can't be a mistake that all children like sweets. Like like their energy levels and and perhaps conflicts that they frequently experience from being vulnerable in the world and sort of wanting more energy during those times. Like I just think I've always thought that since I was a child. I was like children seem to like sweet things. Why do we
Well,
stop that? Like,
I would wager to guess. Okay, so we know that if somebody's in a conflict active stage, they
mhm,
are in a sympathetic state, okay? So they need easy glucose. That is one of
mhm,
the most important things when you are in a conflict active state is we don't want a lot of stimulants because that's going to make you feel more conflicted, but sugar, easy glucose, heck yeah. The body's like, I need fuel. So individuals who are chronically in conflict activity and they're maybe doing like a ketogenic diet, that's going to be tough for them, and
mhm,
they're wondering why do I want so much sugar? Well, there's a purpose for it. Just like when you go into the healing phase, you naturally want more protein because you are rebuilding. Um, Another interesting thing that I haven't mentioned, but I have to give a plug for, is on the HTMA. This is why I love hair tissue mineral analysis so much. Is at least the test the brand that I run, it tells you whether the individual is a slow oxidizer or a fast oxidizer. So a slow oxidizer is naturally going to have an easier time holding on to calcium and magnesium, and they're going to have a harder time holding on to sodium and potassium. They're going to have a slower metabolism. They're going to detox more slowly. They're going to have slower thyroid and slower adrenals. So everything is just slowed down. Versus a fast oxidizer, everything is fast. They cannot hold on to those calming protective minerals, calcium and magnesium. Fast adrenals, fast thyroid. What does that sound like? A child. So
mm,
yeah, this is where kids want ice cream. They want milk. They want a lot of very calcium rich, magnesium rich foods because those are the minerals that they have a hard time holding on to. And those are the minerals that can provide some stability for them. They can kind of slow them down in the way that they need to be because we don't want to be too fast.
mm. Yeah, my daughter loves ice cream. Like I get Haagen-Dazs ice cream so that I don't feel guilty about it. But yeah, she loves like a little like half a cup of ice cream with all of her meals. And
She needs it.
yeah.
She
Yeah.
genuinely needs it, I'm sure. Otherwise, she
Yeah.
wouldn't want it.
Yeah, and I think it's funny, like I offer my children the same food, but they eat quite differently. Like my son will always take all of her cucumbers and she'll take all of his carrots. And I'm like, oh, that's just interesting that they've got this little system worked out of like who takes what, even though
My
they're offered the same thing. But yeah.
my boys do the exact same thing. Like the
Yeah.
one, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Very cute. So there was a few more posts that you made that I wanted to ask about. All right. What about hair loss? Yeah, what about hair loss? And that's another question I had. What about what do you think's going on when you use a product and it seems to work? I'm particularly interested in this because I've just tried this new shampoo and it seems to work, but there's the G&M part of me that is like, is there something more to this than just a product?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had a solid answer for this because so many of my clients come to me with hair loss concerns.
Mhm.
And it's a little bit of a whack-a-mole game because, yeah, from the G&M perspective, I think the foremost um, conflict that people would associate that with would be an active separation conflict.
Mhm.
So that absolutely could be the case. Um, but I also think that it can happen with a thyroid program. Absolutely
Mhm.
could be connected to the thyroid. I would say it could probably be connected to adrenals as well. And just in general, if we are quite depleted and we just don't have a lot of mineral stores, we could also see that the body is in more of a sympathetic state and is not going to be able to prioritize the luxuries of hair, skin, and nails. So, again, when you look at this through the lens of what is the hair telling us, we're not able to see like how much of each mineral is in the body, but we are able to see the movement and the relation that they have to one another. So, somebody who maybe sits in a resting state of being a somewhat balanced slow oxidizer. Okay, so their stage of life is slow. If they go into a bunch of conflict, which could be like one big huge conflict shock that had many different legs to it, or I've experienced this in recent years of having multiple relapses. I went into multiple programs around a similar time. I can find myself going into a fast oxidation pattern. Okay, so I have to go into that fast oxidation pattern because my body needs the energy to get me through this. And I'm also going to be burning through minerals like crazy. So, that particular type of pattern, somebody that presents without many symptoms and they have all the telltale signs of like, I'm losing hair, I'm not sleeping very well, I'm cold, I'm constipated. Um, I would say that, you know, replenishing minerals in general could also help with the hair loss thing because if we're just um frazzled, hair is not going to be priority for the body. It's just not.
Mm. I remember in the RCP stuff, them also talking about the connection between copper and gray hair,
Yeah.
and I thought that was really interesting.
So there's a very important connection between copper and iron. Okay, so
Mhm.
like I said before, the internal iron recycling system is really intricate, and iron cannot regulate itself. I'll say that again. Iron cannot regulate itself. So again, when people are supplementing just with iron, they're failing to realize that it's not going to work because iron doesn't work alone. When it's being shuttled back and forth through the system, and there's these ferroportant doorways, channels for iron to get through, the cofactor that is needed to move those doorways is copper. So if we don't have copper, we are not going to be able to move iron. So if we've been in a lot of self-devaluation and we just do not have a lot of copper in the body, we do not have a lot of real vitamin A, perhaps because we are on a vegetarian diet or we're in a whole lot of conflict and stress, which depletes vitamin A, then we're just not going to be able to move the iron as easily. And what does iron do in the body? Well, you can think of it like let's put a wrought iron bench outside when it rains. And let's see what happens after several days. It's going to rust. So, if we have a whole lot of unbound iron in the tissue because of conflict activity, because of lots of relapses, because we don't have the cofactors to move the iron appropriately, there is going to be some signs of aging. That's where we're going to see more gray. Yes, I know that there is brutal separation related to going gray quickly. But if we're just slowly, incrementally getting more gray and it's earlier than should be expected, I always look to iron. What's going on with the iron? Because
Mm,
copper is melanin. It's what gives the color. Okay, so it's what allows our skin to have pigment, and it's also what allows our hair to have color. So copper is one of those elements that's just not plentiful in the food system. Back in the day when we had beautiful soil, we would have found a lot of copper in the soil, and therefore the food system would have had a lot of copper. And because of farming practices, it's not there anymore. And then we have further exacerbated the issue by enriching the food system with enriched flour.
mhm.
So if you read the back of a bread label and it says enriched flour, that is code for iron filings, aka synthetic iron that the body doesn't really know what to do with.
Mm, mm. And so even with like with a brutal separation conflict, is that what has happened? It's just like that brutal separation just burns through your copper and then the iron is pushed into your tissues. Like,
I think that's a really good guess. I mean, I think that makes the most amount of sense. I mean, that's the way I look at minerals is okay, well, what does this mineral do? And what is the conflict doing? That's kind of how I
mhm,
reverse engineer it is like I look at the scientific chart and read all of the things that are happening physiologically. And I go, okay, what mineral would be associated with that process? The aging, the graying, the loss of pigment.
mhm.
Yeah, it makes sense. It would be copper and iron.
That's so interesting because I think often people think like, oh, is it this or is it that? But it's like it's both. It's like German use medicine is the why, but then all the like all the things are still happening inside of us. Like, yeah, yeah. Um, was there anything else that was my
Oh, you had asked me questions about heavy metals and heavy
yeah, yeah,
detoxing. That's
that's another fascinating one.
hot topic. I'm not going to claim to have all the answers. Like I think I've said early on, like this is all still culminating, but I think it's really interesting. So if we look at the fifth biological law, quintessence, we know that there is no mistake. Okay. We can agree that in the world of microbes, there really is no such thing as a bad microbe. Even with parasites, why would the body inhabit a parasite? Because there's a purpose to it. Well, I have always, even from before German New Medicine, felt like the body doesn't really need to be detoxed. Like the body is doing exactly what it needs to do. I've always felt really crummy when I tried to detox, and it was a hard no for me. So when I started learning about minerals and there was this concept of chelating metals, it immediately just went, no, no, that can't be it. And so um there's not a lot talked about there's not a lot about this in the root cause protocol or in Morley's work, but there are lots of people in the mineral community that talk about this notion of ionic mimicry. So if you look at the periodic table chart, there's a very particular way that the minerals and the metals appear. Okay, there are certain synergistic and antagonistic relationships between them. And while I'm not going to say heavy metals are good and beneficial, they can mimic minerals. So there can be a similar molecular structure to them. So, if you can look this up. If you look up, okay, what's the ionic mimicry of mercury? Well, there is a connection between mercury and selenium. There is a connection between aluminum and I think it's magnesium. So, in my eyes, the body would only hold on to these metals if there's a reason for it. And I wonder, and I have strong reason to believe that the body would only hold on to it if in some way it's benefiting by having that metal. So either it might be serving as a backup for certain functions, maybe not the best, most optimal, but is it holding the line so that we
Mm,
don't completely fall apart? Is it creating strength when we need that? I know that I've had some conversations with Maria, and we want to have more brainstorming about is there a connection between heavy metals and constellations? Because we
mhm,
know with, for example, Mercury, the quality that mercury, the affinity that it has or the quality that it might provide could be similar to saying, um, creating boundaries, creating stability for someone. Maybe somebody doesn't have the boundaries. Maybe they don't have the ability to create that strength for themselves. Maybe they find themselves in megalomania because they have lots of self-devaluation and the body constellates. So could there be a connection there? I don't know. I think there's a lot to be determined. But what I can say is I am very convinced that it isn't a mistake. And I think that um, it would be a greater risk to presume that we know better, that we know what metals are being held on to and why, and that somehow removing them, chelating them, binding them is going to be a smart decision. Because when the body doesn't have the energy to detox, it will not detox. When it does have the energy, it will. So, could the body be in a very conflicted state where all resources are needed and therefore it doesn't have the time or the need to do anything with those metals? And can those metals just hang out there? Yeah, because we know that, for example, mercury it can shapeshift. There are different forms of mercury. There is a more toxic form and there is a less toxic form, an inorganic form. The body can change the way these metals are. It can change a mercury into a less toxic form or back into a toxic form. I think it's sulfur resistant bacteria that have a big hand in that. So I think there's a lot of purpose.
Mm, I love this conversation so much. I'm going to be sending this to all my pregnant friends, all my mother friends, because I think this is a huge thing. Like in the last couple of weeks, I have had so many people message me, like close friends messaging me, being like, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? And it's like been like, I want to lose weight. I want to detox. I want, like, my body's full of toxins. And it's all this message of like, I am broken. There's something wrong with me and I need to control it now. And I always say to people, like, if you like, I'm not someone that really understands details and specifics and everything like that. I'm not. But for me, what German New Medicine, and not just German New Medicine, but I think motherhood, but I'll get into that in a second, has given me is just this idea to just trust that your body knows what it's doing. Like, even if you don't understand it, there's a reason. And even before learning GNM, I think a huge shift came for me in becoming a mother. I think that before motherhood, it was like, whether it was about health or whether it was about culture, politics, anything, it was like this idea of like, everything's wrong and I need to control it and I need to fix it and I need to do this and that. And it's like, so I need to like starve myself and make myself run for hours a day. And like, it was all this harsh, like, I will get where I want through punishment sort of thing. And then I think when I had a baby and I was like, wow, this baby is perfect, like similar to what you said. And it's like, obviously they don't need to be coerced or punished or whipped into line. And it was like this shift that gave me almost permission to like, to feel like, oh, actually, perhaps the way to health is through like love and nurturing. And I think with the detox as well, that I'd always thought like, oh, so you just like you go on a water fast and that'll get all the bad stuff out of you. And then when I learned, like, it's like, no, you give your body everything that it needs, and that gives it the safety and the resources to do what it needs to do and to detox naturally if it wishes to, if that's beneficial.
Or the body will naturally fast. Like we've all been in a big old healing phase where we can't eat for several days. Again, why would we presume to know when the body needs to fast? Why would we
Hmm.
presume to know when that's what I just go back to is like, how silly are we? How silly are we to take this beautifully created body and try to intervene
And think we know better. Yeah.
because we're
And
impatient.
yeah,
That's the big thing is it's the impatience. We don't like
yeah.
suffering. We don't want to sit in suffering, but the suffering is the most important part. That is the point of it
Mm,
all. Is
mm.
sitting in it, sitting with it, seeing what's there.
And yeah, and just with the sugar stuff as well, I know that when I was I think postpartum both times. Like I just wanted to eat so much sweets. I just wanted like ice cream and so much fruit and so much sweets. And the first time around I thought like, oh, this is like bad and I need to force myself to eat vegetables and stuff. And then when I learned all this stuff, I was like, no, it was like you were going through a lot. You had high energy demands. You're probably experiencing a bunch of conflict as well. Like your body was doing exactly what it needed and you didn't need to feel guilty about it. You just needed to like allow, like trust yourself. Like, yeah.
And I mean, some could argue that it can be a little harder to digest vegetables. And I don't think
Hmm.
it's a coincidence that most of the time pregnant women aren't. I mean, there are some that will sit there and eat a lot of vegetables, but I hear that often, like, I don't want
Hmm.
anything. I just want fruit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my first pregnancy, I was like, my baby doesn't want me to be healthy. Like every time I eat a vegetable, I vomit. And my second pregnancy, I was like, oh, it just makes sense. It just wants fruit. Just eat fruit. Like, that's
Oh.
fine. Yeah.
One thing I haven't mentioned that I think is really fun to mention, especially for women in pregnancy or people that have children that want to be able to provide easy, natural healing support at home. One of my favorite ways to support minerals is through homeopathic cell salts. So
Hmm.
when I look at an HTMA and there might be an opportunity for some support with potassium or some support with calcium, apart from asking, are you eating, what you want to eat? Are you eating as diversely as you care to eat? I also will suggest cell salts because what they do is, they're from the 19th century. They are as ancient as homeopathy itself. It's a sort of subcategory of homeopathy, and they are from they're mineral compounds, but they're at such uh, a small or low dose, if you will, that it's not the same as taking potassium or iron. What it's doing
Hmm.
is it's encouraging the body to turn its attention to certain minerals and to essentially increase absorption and utilization. So you can read about Dr. Schusler. He actually has a pregnancy program. He has it broken down by trimester of which particular cell salts are beneficial to mom and baby at different phases. But I love that for kids too because if your child is in a healing phase, it can feel really scary. Okay,
Hmm.
nobody wants to see their child suffering. I know we know intelligently that fevers are good, but there's still a part of us that's like, oh, I just want to give them something. So cell salts are beautiful. There's only 12 of them. They're very easy to dose. In my opinion, I find them a little bit more accessible than like the whole homeopathy world, which for many people feels overwhelming. Like there's only 12 and it's pretty straightforward. There's just a couple of them that are really good for like the stink conflicts and laryngeal, bronchial, throat stuff. And then, there's one that's really good for kids that have fevers or children's headaches. And so, it's a great way to have something on hand if you need it.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds great. I know that I'm interested in homeopathy, but that I think I did like a homeopathy first aid course when I was pregnant with my son, and it was great, but I also was a bit overwhelmed and I was like, oh, do I need to have all these hundreds of like what if
Yeah.
I don't have the right remedy on hand? Like what do I do? How do I know? Yeah, that sounds great. I'll be looking that up. Um, so how
Yeah.
do you
You asked about iron. Okay. And in case there's anybody listening to this that's pregnant, that is one of my favorite things. If somebody is in the third trimester and they are worried about their iron stores, let's say that their midwife or whomever they're working with is like, oh no, your iron. Uh, Ferrum phos, which is one of the cell salts, is iron phosphate. But in a homeopathic form, and it is a really good option. If you just want to take something that's going to help with the absorption and utilization of what's already in your body. So it's not like taking a synthetic iron pill. And if you are getting some natural iron through, eating meat or whatever, it can be that one thing that just sort of sets you in the right direction.
mm, mm. That just reminded me, I've also heard people speak about how, like, if you bleed a lot during birth, that that could just be a totally natural, like, you're just getting rid of the iron, the extra iron that you have, and
Absolutely, because you
yeah.
you weren't able to menstruate, you weren't able to dump iron. That's the thing that nobody talks about is, like, you're just accumulating, accumulating, accumulating. Well, I don't know why people think that by the time you get to the 3rd trimester, it's just poof, disappeared. No, it's
Mhm,
there.
mhm. And what do you think about the idea of men having, like, what's it called? Like, donating blood in lieu of having
I
a
mean,
period?
I've done it myself because before I found GNM, I'm more in the hemochromatosis camp. Like, I tend to be in more of a self-devaluation hanging healing, or lots of relapses. So I have done it, and I will agree with Morley that, if you are in a state where you do have a whole lot of iron in the bloodstream, you actually feel good afterwards. Like, I just had this, like, burst of energy. It's not something that I would recommend widely now that I know what I know about biological healing, but is it an option that is available to people if they feel it's supportive? Absolutely. I don't know that I would say it's something I would ever wanna do with, like, regularity. Like, I know some people that do it every quarter or whatever. Um, I don't know about that, but, like, if I found myself in, menopause or perimenopause and I was having lots of hot flashes and I looked at my blood markers and they were all very high of iron, I would probably consider a blood donation because I do see a connection between, certain types of symptoms like hot flashes and unbound iron.
Mm. Yeah, that's super interesting. Um, I was also wondering, we're sort of running out of time, but if you still have time, about how German medicine and mineral knowledge sort of does that influence how you think about relationships, the way that you mother your children, the way that you think about femininity and masculinity, and yeah, has there been any shifts or big realizations for you there? Yeah.
Countless, countless.
Yeah.
I feel like the last year, um, I really do feel like a new person. I had already started my transition out of the corporate world before I found German New Medicine, so I didn't know I was going more into my feminine, but in retrospect, like, my life was all leading to this point of I needed to get some distance from that world and that type of narrative to be open to the concepts of German New Medicine and biologically feminine or biologically masculine. I would not have had the same level of openness, and I don't think I would have been willing to make the changes that I have within my self-awareness, and I think some pretty significant improvements in my marriage, and how I show up as a mom, especially how I relate to my 2 boys who I now know need to be parented differently than if they were girls. So I think the biggest thing with German New Medicine is just taking anxiety off the table. Like, I don't worry about things anymore. Like, my kids' school sent everybody home because of hand, foot, mouth, and I was just kinda laughing. I'm like, "Okay, this is interesting." And people are "Oh, are you worried?" I'm like, "No, I'm not worried. I'm not worried because I no longer subscribe to contagion."
Wow.
And because of what I know about minerals, I know that I have a cabinet full of cell salts if I should need something for myself or my husband or my boys, and apart from that, most of the time I'm just like, what do we need to feel safe? Like, what do we need to feel comfortable? That's, like, the only thing we think about anymore is, like, just just make yourself
Mm,
comfortable and
mhm.
lower any kind of worry about anything, and, if your body is needing to rest, rest.
This is probably a whole new question for a new podcast episode, but just as a mother of boys, I know that I feel a bit of, like, anxiety with my son of, that my understanding of what, like, to be biologically masculine, it's, like, risky. And I'm like, "No," like, I'm
No,
just
I
yeah,
know.
like, I think it's a real,
I know.
challenge to, to not overmother your boys, like, to not want to yeah, like
Yeah, and I mean, I went through, the famous Freya course,
yeah.
and hearing that, nature isn't kind to boys and just
Mm,
how there's just it's so different. I mean, I never really oriented to it that way, that like women live, in theory, we should live this charmed life with less worry, less stress, less strife, and men and boys actually in some way thrive with
Mhm.
challenge and suffering and trying to figure their way out of things. So yeah, I mean, that's when I go to that place of wanting to coddle and wanting to just like, oh, I just want to like, especially my 4-year-old, like it's still so hard
Mhm.
for me to think of him like a big. My 8-year-old is different, but the 4-year-old, I'm like, I just still want to coddle you and like love on you. I just tell myself, like, I want to set them up for success. Like, I want them to feel like strong, independent, capable, emotionally. I don't want them to be too much in their emotion. I want them to attract partners that are really good for them and healthy for them.
Mm.
And um, yeah, it's whether we're talking about my marriage or mothering, it's like a constant inner dialogue of like, am I doing the right thing? Should I not have done that? And I mean, all you can do is we all make mistakes. We've all made choices. It's just now I catch myself and I'll say, ooh, I probably should have let you do that yourself. Or I didn't need to intervene. Or, that kind of sounded like a criticism. I didn't mean it to be a criticism. I think
Mm.
you're really smart. I think you're really capable. Or you don't need help with this.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Those are beautiful reminders. Yeah. All right. Before we start to wrap up, is there any other topics that no? So how do people work with you?
So I have different offerings. So some people like to work with me with testing, some people like to work with me without testing. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be all about the hair tissue mineral analysis. It's just one tool in the tool bag. So I offer just a session for somebody that might want to have some help with going through their health history and their symptom timeline and maybe decoding their symptoms and trying to make sense of them. So that's a great place for somebody to start if they're just like, hey, can you tell me more about what's going on biologically? Can we start to think about what what solutions my psyche is looking for? And then I also offer an HTMA package for somebody that's really interested in this and is like, ooh, I want to know what's going on with me. So in that particular case, I would, before I do an intake with somebody, I would send them the home kit. It's a really simple thing I send in the mail. I have worked with some people abroad, in which case I can send that digitally. Um, Instead, just to cut down on some of the shipping time. And it's just a really simple thing you do at home. And then once I get the results, I schedule the review with the person. And then the majority of work I've done throughout the years has been in more of a container of time. So the vast majority of people work with me for at least 4 months. And it's a very methodical process of kind of unpacking the layers or peeling back the layers of the onion, so to speak. So starting with like your life story and trying to make sense of what's been going on. And then the HTMA comes in, but after we've already gotten to know each other and we have some suspicions about what's going on. So to me, that's a tool to kind of confirm what we already think is happening. So a lot of what I'm doing is about coaching, like where do we need to where might we benefit from looking at our life, whether it's our relationships, our in some cases work, our um, how we feel about being a parent, how we feel about our partner, all the things. Um, Yeah. So all that to say, I have a lot of different offerings depending on what the person needs.
Mm. Thank you so much. And where do people find you?
So I have a website, which is thehealthinspirer.com. And then I'm also on Instagram, which is also the Health Inspirer.
Mm. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I know that so many people will get so much value from this. I have, and I will, as I said, be sending this to all my fellow pregnant women because there's so much gold in there. But yeah,
Yay. Of
thank you. It was really lovely to meet you.
course, you too.
All right. Thank you for listening to Here on Earth. I hope today's conversation gave you something to think about. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or leave a review. You can find me on Instagram at hereonearth_podcast. Until next time, I hope you enjoy your time here on Earth.